Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilu here on the Juicy Living Tour today in Santa Barbara with Noah Benshea. Hello.
Hi, Lilu. It's nice to be here with you. Thank you for making this visit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having us in your lovely, lovely home. This is very relaxing. It feels good. The spirit here is fully blossoming.
Well, I hope. I feel that. This is a new home for us. We've only been here a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
We moved, so I'm just discovering the kind of nooks and crannies of my own in my own home, and it's a real, it's a nice experience. I like this place a lot.
Yeah,
it's opening up in a nice way for us. I've lived in Santa Barbara for 35 years, but
we're just off right now. We're 5 minutes from Santa Barbara.
Yeah, and this is just south of Santa Barbara, in the foothills of Carpinteria. That's where we're located. And
so for you guys that have not seen the previous interviews I did with Ben, we actually talked about many things, but you are the author of over 22 books that have been translated internationally. So you're an international speaker, counselor, advisor. You've been doing some incredible things with top companies, top 500 companies, including Starbucks, with a lovely quote. I mean, you're out there, you're doing PBSs. It's wonderful. You have a big reach and you're very inspiring to millions of people. So it's such a delight and an honor to spend this moment with you right now and share this wisdom, especially in those hard times, because we all need some advice right now. A lot of us face chaos all around the world, including people from Japan watching this. They're losing everything. Yeah. They're losing their homes, their family, their loved ones. So what is your recommendation in those challenging times? More than challenging.
Well, they're not challenging singularly to others, they're challenging to all of us. We all experience it because change is always both global and local at the same time. So when we watch the news, whether it's going on in the Middle East or what's going on in the Far East, however that's going on, we integrate that personally. So all of us have issues with ourselves, whether it's because we witness ourselves getting older, or our children getting older, or our relationship growing tired, or our relationship growing, and the economic uncertainty in our own lives. So change is the only constant. And the difficulty with that is that the classic definition of neurosis is when we would do something which is negative but familiar over something which is healthy but new. So the challenge in our life is really to witness our life as an adventure, because if you think you're in charge of your life, you're definitely writing a recipe for despair. I'll share something that happened to myself and my wife recently. We were coming up, I was giving a talk up in Northern California, and it was coming down, it was pouring rain, and we came down, this is one of the major artery highways in Southern California, and as we hit the bottom there was a pool of water, and my car started hydroplaning. So that means the car just sort of takes off. So we're heading now toward the divider at about 65 or 70 miles an hour, and I'm steering, but I'm not steering, right? I have my hands on the steering wheel, but I'm not in control. And my wife tells me, you did great, you didn't hit the brakes, you moved through it. But even as we moved away from it, the car did 2 360s in the middle of the road. And then I thought cars coming behind us were just gonna smash into us broadside, but everybody stopped and we were just there. And suddenly we were okay and there wasn't a scratch in the car, and we got off the highway, and I stood under the rain and cried and thanked God for 5 seconds about the experience. But the great lesson was, we can have our hands on the steering wheel a lot and have to come to realize that we're not in charge. So you wake up in the morning and you say, what can I do? You can ask yourself how you're conducting yourself. That's what you can do. The number one illness in the world is depression. The number one reason for depression is stress. The number one stress is when people try to think they're in control of what is out of their control. You're not in control of what happens to you. You are in control of your response. Respond, don't react. So that's the challenge in our lives. How do we deal with all the transformation and change going on and don't get into a reaction syndrome? Otherwise, you're like that pool ball who gets hit by this ball, hits by this ball, and you're sunk. You say, how the hell did that happen? Yeah. Right? You never made a thought to it. You were just in a reaction formation. A lot of us spend our lives in reaction formations instead of responding. So the challenge to respond, curiously, the first step to responding is humility, and to know you're not in charge. And so if you were to ask me what's the best way to deal with all the transformation, dealing at every level, at a global level, at a domestic level, in your backyard level, the challenge for us, I think, is to accept that we're not in charge and to try and think about how we're conducting ourselves, because that's what you can do. If you wake up in the morning and you wait to see what the world delivers to your doorstep, to see how you are, you're a fool. Because you're not in charge of what the world delivers to your doorstep. You are in charge of your response. So I get up in the morning and say, I didn't do anything wrong.
But don't we? I mean, we have certainly a share in this co-creation, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, this is not to say that you are not accountable.
Yeah, and
right?
we create attentions and our thoughts also.
But we're just not in charge. That's a very.
So talk more about that, because this is very interesting.
Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's take it out of a global level and bring it down into a domestic level, right? A relationship level. Because relationships are a huge part of all of our lives, and you are not in charge of making your partner happy. You cannot make your partner happy. Your partner has to make himself or herself happy. That's their responsibility. All you can do is make sure you're conducting yourself in a way that's okay with you, and if that makes them happy, you're in a great relationship, right? If they get happy, if they don't, that's their business. You're not in charge, because if you were, the next thing they could say to you is, what do you think, you're my parent? So I think that's a great example of it, right? Another example, I was talking to somebody on the phone earlier about their children. And they said, well, they're getting married and they've had a good education and I try to take care of them. My husband and I have been married a long time, so we think they'll be okay. I said I had to remind them that because you plant the seed does not make you the tree, right? So you give your kids the best of intentions, and then it's their life, their right to their life, and how they're going to play it. And it's not just. Let's play it another. I'll give my. I lost my mother a couple of years ago, when she was about 84, 85. She was in a nursing home, and she remembered she started to cry because her mother died shortly after she was born, and she was put in an orphanage. My mother had a very hard life. So I grew up with my mother crying about not having a mother. So mother's 84 years old, and we're in this nursing home, and she starts crying about it again. I said, Mom, I said, you're 84 years old. I've been hearing you cry about your mother for 84 years. Isn't it time you got over this, get past this at some level? She said, you leave me alone. You let me have my hurt. I have a right to my hurt.
Wow.
And I said, you do have your right to your hurt. Excuse me, that's your hurt. You have a right to it. And she had this as a way that kept her warm, as defined her all this time. So I thought I was a really good son. I was going to lead her out of this hurt. No, she did it. So I wasn't in charge of doing that. All I could do is say, okay, what's the witness here? How does it play through in somebody else's life? And not to beat this up too much, but what you want to do is somebody said, you started the conversation by saying, Noah, you've done this, you're doing this, you do this, big companies. I have 23 books, 18 languages, nominated for a Pulitzer, PBS, all this stuff, advisor, all very interesting. If you were to ask me what I'm here to do, I'm here to be a source of strength to others. It took me a long time in my life. I may be a writer, maybe a consultant, maybe a father, maybe a husband, this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to be a source of strength to others. I take my work seriously. I try not to take myself too seriously. It's tough to be, aw, shucks, yeah. This is the work the Lord gave me to do, and I'm trying to do it. And I get up and do it. I'm from a blue-collar family. My father worked hard his whole life. I get up and go to work. This is what I'm here to do. So when you call me and say, can we talk about this? Yeah, we can talk about this. That's what I'm here to do, the same way as anybody's here is to do anything else. So, and what I'm trying to do is what took me until 60 to learn. I'm trying to pass along so that you'll learn at 40 and somebody else will learn at 20. So it doesn't take, because we see what happens when people don't learn. Alcoholism, passed generation to generation. Child abuse, generation to generation. Domestic abuse, generation to generation. Because people get caught in the same circle being reactive to the same thing. Yeah. So I'm saying, if I can give you some information, because sooner while experience is a good teacher, the tuition is your life. So I want to cut that tuition. I want to help people get the information that will get their life to feel better sooner, because that's what I'm here. That's what I'm here to do. And I was asked to speak at, at Gap and Old Navy, this big retail stores here in the United States, to their senior executives. So I finished, and this woman said to me, and that was great. I'm going to never forget this. I'll never forget you. I said, listen, 20 years from now, you're going to meet some kid, and you're going to say to him, 20 years ago, I heard this guy talk, and I can't remember whether his name was Noah or Moses or what it was, but it was really a good idea. So that's the deal. Yeah. We're here to pass along.
Yeah. But tell us more about this relationship that we have then with the Creator. How can we be more than at service? How can we participate in harmony with His will and be there of service then, especially in those hard times? How can we let our heart guide us, and be in this intimate connection with I guess, God?
Yeah, well, that's...
with ourselves?
I mean, let me. I'll give you a broader view because we have a moment to talk about this. A lot of us think that we want to have a relationship with God is a vertical relationship between us and God. Huh? So God says, remember, the first 5 commandments are between me and you. The second 5 commandments are between you and each other. So God says, if you want to have a relationship with me, show me how you're relating to the people around you. So what you think is a vertical relationship is a horizontal relationship, right? But the ability to have a horizontal relationship, the ability to love others, is premised on our ability to love ourselves. So an inner relationship that is healthy affords us a healthy horizontal relationship, which affords us a healthy vertical relationship. A lot of people, so the place that it starts is not like, God says, oh, you love me, that's great. Show me you love me by loving others. How can you love others? By your ability to love yourself. Now, curiously, it says in Scripture that the Bible can teach you everything but fear of God. So I said, why fear of God? When I heard this, I said, I have a relationship with God, I feel, but it isn't fear. So I know what it is. It's humility. Fear says there's somebody bigger, something more than you out there. So Aristotle said that honesty is the doorway to all wisdom. Aristotle's a pretty smart guy by everybody's opinion. But if honesty is the portal to all wisdom, humility is the portal to all honesty. That is, if you are filled with yourself, you cannot be filled with something greater than yourself. If you're filled with yourself, you cannot be in a relationship with someone else. You can't be increased in that, right? So you have to be, loving yourself doesn't mean to be self-infatuated. It means really to be prepared to embrace yourself for all your failings, all your shortcomings, everything, and knowing that when you fail and you're frail and you fall, you're human, right, at the same time. So
that's how you define success.
Yeah, to me it is. It is. Somebody once said General Patton once said, and I don't always quote General Patton, but he was quote, "Success is how high you bounce after you hit bottom." Right? What do you do then? And
sorry, I got you lost on the.
No, I just was thinking. Actually, I was thinking about something I said to my kid when he was. My son is a very big. Tough guy who's won a gold medal for the U.S. down in Brazil as a heavyweight in jiu-jitsu and is the Pan Am Games, but he's finishing his PhD in religious studies, right? When he was a kid, he was really into doing all this stuff. And one time when he had a loss that was really tough, I said, I wanted to tell him something, right? But I had to tell him in terms you could talk to a little boy, I wasn't the professor of philosophy talking to a class. I said, before you get the gold buckle, you have to get black and blue, and I think that's what happens. Everybody has that bruise in life, and that bruise is the humility of being a human being. And so I think that the best way to gain access to the divine is to realize that you don't have to do anything to gain access. You just have to get out of your own way. That is, God doesn't go into hiding because we shut our eyes. Right? God is present. The question is, how blind are we? We don't have to worry about why we can't hear God except to listen for our deafness. We don't have to see we can't see, except go looking for our blindness. If we don't want to know God, we only have to go looking for our ignorance. right? Because God is omnipresent. The question is, where are we? And the only thing that blocks us from that is our pride. So when you want to start a painting or a dance or make love or say a prayer, you have to begin, or as my son would say, check your ego at the door. Right? When he used to go in to train, it would be like, check your ego at the door. So I think that's the first challenge. And
but as you said earlier, like with your mom and diseases or problems and things like that, we get hooked into this is mine, and there's a part of us that likes this suffering because then it's part of us connects with others too through that. Some feel the love, some feel. I mean, the diseases and those challenges seems to fit, and some people we get attached to it.
I think that's the case. I think that.
It's like mine. We make it ours.
Yes. I did this drawing once of a profile of a woman, and you start to see her head here, and then from her eyes came tears, and from her tears then became her nose and this, her breast, then down. So the line underneath was woman using self-pity to define self. Right? We do that. A classic example is people form what I call wound societies. So a great example of this is women who have been divorced get together to talk with other women who've been divorced, and they all sit around and talk about how they were treated, and they get so addicted to this that the prospect of leaving means you're leaving the group instead of moving on. But my statement on if you're busy embracing the past, you can't hug the future. God only gave you 2 arms. So you have to decide if you're prepared to move on. So somebody, a great teacher, a physician said, I will cry for you once, I will cry for you twice, the third time we'll stand up and walk away. Right? Because otherwise I'm becoming an enabler. I'm going to try to do it. And does that mean that there's not tough stuff in life? Absolutely there's tough stuff. Is there stuff that can't be healed, that people aren't going to solve with? It's more than I can. Absolutely. And I'm not above that, or think I can tell somebody this. And I'll give you a great example. Oftentimes when I talk, after a conversation like this, people will say to me, oh, I know, Noah, I agree with you completely because God never gives you more than you can bear. I said, wait a minute. Sometimes God does give you more than you can bear. And when people feel they can't bear what God has given them, I don't want them to feel they have to bear my expectation of what they can bear on top of their burden. So when people fall, I have to honor that there was more than they could take. People do get crushed by life. There is evil out there, there is bad out there, there are terrible things that happen that crush people's soul. I'm not confused by that. I'm just saying that to the extent that we can do anything to help ourselves to health, we have to be prepared to help ourselves to health. We want to be prepared to move to health and not be prepared that our notion of ourself is illness and not be able to do it. Can some people not do it? Yes. What is my reaction? My reaction is compassion. Compassion. Because I used to, when I was younger, I would pray to God for wisdom. As I've gotten older, I pray to God for wisdom and compassion. Because compassion literally from Latin means with passion. Caring with passion, because there are people going through stuff that's too tough. And my being a smart guy doesn't really change anything one iota. My being a compassionate human being makes a hell of a lot of difference. So I think that there's a really time that you, if you will, there's a line in one of my books is, my heart knows what my mind only thinks it knows. There's a time when you have to just not be smarter than the situation, but open your heart to the situation. And so you say, well, you've been saying this, and then you're saying this. I'm saying, yes, I'm saying this. Because in Taoism, there's a great teaching, in the Tao Ching, says, you have to walk down the path in life, prepared at any moment for the worst thing to jump out and attack you, right? And you have to walk down the path in life, prepared at any moment for the most wonderful thing to leap out and embrace you. Right? And you have to walk down the path in life prepared at any moment for absolutely nothing to happen at all. And you have to walk down the path in life prepared for all 3 moments concurrently at the same time. And that's the master game. And the reason it's the master game is because you are not presuming the moment by your pride of what's going to happen. You come to the moment as an adventure. Right? This is what happened. And be to embrace it. Otherwise, it's like you meet somebody and they were nasty last time, so you're prepared to meet them as nasty. No, be prepared for them to be who they are. Who they are is how they choose to conduct themselves. If you choose to presume them, then you're taking part in who they're becoming. The challenge is for us is to come to that. It's a tough game, but it's a master game, and it's a game worth holding in one's mind's eye, if nothing else, I think, to try and see.
So what question do you wake up in the morning with to allow such a beautiful space, you know, for amazing things to happen in our lives, and for compassion to be present, and for union and connections?
I try, for me, I try not to, with pretty good intensity, and I don't get out of bed in the morning before I say my prayers. And by the prayer that there's a line in one of my Jacob books where he shut his eyes and thanked God for returning his soul. For the first thing I get up, oh, I'm awake, you know, like. The prayer I really try to do is, it's a recognition of the oneness. It's the ancient Hebrew prayer is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. So when I hear that, I try to come into that, to that oneness, and just be there and be in the, and what is it, to me, in that oneness means you're in a state of grace, right? That you're at one with something outside yourself. And because it's very easy, I can assure you can be a really successful author about all these important ideas, and you can wake up in the morning angry at your agent who took 2.5% on this deal, you know, and totally distracted, right? So I have a friend of mine who's a very famous athlete, and I was telling him, well, I'm trying to remember to, I said, I was walking on the beach the other day and I was trying to remind myself to count my blessings. He said, you were walking on the beach and trying to remember to count your blessings? That was your blessing. Right? And there was a great teacher named Nachman of Bratslav. He was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, the father of what we know, the Hasidic Jews, you know, Jews that wear the long, like this, the long. Yeah. So he used to weigh with his students, his method of teaching was to make them walk, and for an hour, they would just walk, everywhere they saw, they would just say, thank you, thank you. And we just witness whatever, thank you, thank you. Now, it's easy, it would seem, to say thank you when you see the sunlight coming off the reflection of the water on the, you know, on a palm frond, right? That would be easy. There's a line I wrote sometimes, that sometimes the only thing worse than a bad mirror is a good one, right? So you get up in the morning and you see yourself and you say, you see yourself in reflection, you say, I don't like what I see, but I'm thankful that I saw it because I'm going to eat less tomorrow, right? Or I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do, right? I'm going to have, so being in a state of gratitude for seeing things which aren't always flattering, but are clearly there to serve you. If you will have the courage, when you go to trial, they ask you, promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. All self-transformation. This is a complete, straight-ahead, brief Noahism. All self-transformation begins with self-witnessing, right? To be a self-witness, you have to be able to tell yourself the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help you God. In love. In love, in life, in any moment. No, but in compassion with ourselves too, because not beating ourselves up. Absolutely. This is a really great point, Lulu. Let me share. I can't tell you how many times, how often, people have been raised to think that being self-critical is an act of character, or being self-destructive is an act of character. That is, if you're not beating yourself up, if it's not mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa, you're not doing this to yourself with then you're not really being honoring God. The prophet Isaiah says it. He says, God doesn't want you. What does it serve God for you to suffer? God doesn't want you to suffer and say, I'm suffering and now I know God. God, if you take the notion that the divine is the all-powerful, omnipotent, then you say, well, nothing could have compelled God to make the world, right? God wasn't compelled because somebody said, God did this as an act of love. So if the creation is an act of love, how more then do we mimic that by conducting ourselves with our life as an act of love, whatever we do? And there are people who have little and bring themselves to it, and people who have more who bring themselves to less. But so you're absolutely right. It isn't. A lot of people feel unless they're scourging themselves, right? That they're not coming to. And consequently, of course, If you feel you have to do that to yourself, then you know how you feel like you have to deal with others, right? So we all know somebody in our life who we think is a very controlling person, right? And we've distanced ourselves to some extent because this person is just way too controlling to be around. So when I was younger and I'd witness a person like this, I'd go like, so controlling. I can't. It's just terrible, right? And I'd say, do you realize who this person is? I think I was so smart for witnessing who this person was. As I got older, I realized, oh my gosh, if she's this way with me, imagine how she is to herself. If she's trying to put this bit in my mouth, imagine how she's riding her horse, right?
So compassion then comes in.
Exactly. Then I say, suddenly, I'm not angry at her for being controlling. I'm compassionate for her that she's living under this, and I know why. I can see the events in her life. And so the question is, what is she going to do about it to change her life before she passes it along? Because we do pass it along. I tell everybody, in everybody's closet, they have emotional hand-me-downs. Everybody's closet, they've got emotional clothing they got from a parent or a friend or something. And it may be hanging in the closet for a long time. I don't take it, I don't wear it that often. It's in your closet. You take it. Oh, I checked it in at, yeah, but you still have the clean ticket in your wallet, right? It's just go through your closet and see what emotional hand-me-downs you have, and decide when you're going to get up in the morning and what morning you put those on. When are you wearing emotional hand-me-downs? And just, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. I'm not going to. Years ago, my wife's an interior designer, and she was really doing this for some people, and their kids were the family was wealthy, and the kids had all these toys, and the parents were redoing the kids' room, so there wasn't room for all these 150 stuffed toys the kids had all the time. So the kids were told they got to give these toys to some other poor kids who don't have too much. And they said, how are the kids going to deal with it? I mean, how? And they walked in from the back, and they saw this one little girl. She must have been about 5 or 6 at the time. She was picking up each stuffed animal. She goes, oh, I love you so much. I'm going to miss you. Bye-bye. And throwing it over her shoulder. Picking up another one. Oh, I love you so much. I miss you. Bye-bye. Throwing it over her shoulder. So kids can get past their attachments like that, just as 84-year-old women can say, don't try to take my hurt away from me. That's my hurt, and I need it. And people do it a long time. It's so, sometimes it's so profoundly sad, because it's like you see somebody picking a scab and wondering why it never heals, and a lot of it's just the information. And so you're going to ask me this stuff, and we're going to have this conversation, and there's going to be people who will listen, and some people's lives will be dramatically impacted. Other people's lives will just sort of listen to it, right, the way they collect information. Because my contention is that most of us don't lack for information. What we lack is the character to act on the information at hand. So the conversation really is a character conversation. That's why when I said like the Taoist, the master game is to do this. And it's the character conversation, because I can tell you something, but if you file it away, oh, that's great, I just put that away. There's people that collect ideas, they collect quotes, they collect it all, but never bring it to bear. And they live their life as if they have another one in the bank. I wouldn't bank on it.
And it takes courage to act upon it.
It takes huge courage, and curiously, courage is not the absence of weakness, it's how you wrestle with your weaknesses. So it isn't like, it isn't that, I'll tell you, years ago I was invited to give this talk. I was invited to give this talk on this cruise ship up to Alaska with all these executives. So myself, Deepak Chopra, an Olympic gold medal winner, the first American to climb Everest and stuff. And because we gave our talks at the same time, we couldn't hear each other. So at other times we would just take this walk around we'd be walking around the boat talking to each other, right? So I'm going around with this guy who was the first American to climb Everest. Great guy, going up in the Seattle area. So I said, he said, I get letters all the time from people who want to go mountain climbing with me. I said, how did you decide who you're going to accept as a climbing partner? He said, well, the ones that write me and say, I want to climb with you. I never get scared on mountains. I have no fears whatsoever. He said, I couldn't climb with them. Those people will get you killed. He said, a mountain climber is somebody who knows fear and respects fear and wrestles with the fear. Right? So whatever you're trying to climb in your life, whatever you're trying to climb out of or climb into or surmount, however it is, right? I think witnessing your fears and your uncertainties isn't the absence of heroism. It's the it's the heroism of day-to-day living, right? And I'll give you a great example of it, because if people think when they think heroism, they think of somebody running up a hill under gunfire, right? It's the woman who at 11 o'clock in the morning, when she's home, living in a suburban home, opens the closet and sees the bottle of vodka there and doesn't pour herself a drink.
Yeah.
It's the guy who's at 10 o'clock at night on a road trip and some woman says, hey, well, let's go back up to the room and talk about it. He said, thanks, I'm going to pass. It's the kid who at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when other kids call him a coward because he won't do something, walks away from it. And almost always this level of heroism, definitive personal acts of heroism, happen on a private stage, right? There's no other witnesses, there's no applauding. I mean, years ago, I remember, when I was about 30, I was doing an article about how I went to Window Rock, Arizona, the home of the Navajo Indians. I went to do an article about how the Navajos celebrate the 4th of July. I thought, why the hell would Indians want to celebrate the 4th of July, since here they were conquered, right? So I wrote this article that came back, was for Harper's Magazine, at the time, very prominent intellectual magazine in the United States. So I finished this, and there was an old Irish guy who was the editor there. I'll save you his name. He's since passed away, but a really talented guy. So I turned in this article. I was so excited that I was going to have this big article, you know. So he read it, and he said, I don't like this, and I don't like this, and I don't like this. And he could see that I was crestfallen, right? That I was saddened. He said, oh, am I hurting your feelings? Let me tell you, no one in the world really gives a shit if you stop writing. Right now. So that was that experience. Fast forward 10 years, I'm down at the bottom of my driveway getting an envelope out of my mailbox, and it's a letter from my editor at Random House saying, congratulations, your book, Jacob the Baker, is now not only a national but an international best-selling book, and you're an international best-selling author. Congratulations. And as I stood in the bottom of my driveway by myself, all I could hear was this old Irish editor saying to me, hey, you think anybody cares if you stop writing right now, right? So I can assure you that in anybody's life, heroism, aka faith, and we can talk about that, that's another way of looking at it, plays in your life. Certainly, to be an artist, it's a fact of life. You have to live with it. To do what you do. I mean, you know, this is like somebody's, I want to do this. Oh, great, that's great, but how are you going to make a living? I'm sure somebody at one point said that to you when you told them you want to do this, right? Or to believe that you want to, when you fall in love, right? I had been married for a long time and came out of that relationship, and it was a very, very dark time in my life. And I met my future wife. We've been together now 14 years. And at one point, I thought to myself, and this is not I'm not giving away hyper personal about us, but just about people and relationships. I thought to myself, well, I'm going to be in this relationship with her, and my wife's a beautiful woman, and what if she decides she's going to have an affair with somebody? How are you going to do? How are you going to deal with that? And I thought to myself, you know what? If she does that, that's her business. My business is just to love her and be honest and be there for her. And if she does it, then I'll be crushed, and I'll survive, because I've just come through a survival. And whether it's her or me, the challenge is, it's how I choose to conduct myself. How we choose to conduct ourselves in the face of things. You can't presume how this person is going to do something. And that's the courage of loving. It's not to be an idiot and love somebody who's giving you all the signals is a bad person, you know. Women, you know, falling in love with men they vow they're going to change, but just, you know, it's still the courage. It's the courage of falling in love, and it's falling in
love with life too, isn't it?
Yeah. It's exactly what it is, because it isn't like you're doing one and not the other, you know, because you can't separate loving from living, or living from loving. It would be like taking out the heart of something and then saying I've got the same thing, you know, or. I think that it just takes, at the end of the day, the act of living is an act of courage. And that goes back to the beginning part of this conversation. With the world in such turmoil, how do people have the courage of how they're going to live there? And the courage isn't how am I going to change the world? The courage is, how am I going to change myself? How am I going to conduct myself at the best level? They say, you know, think globally, act locally. That's always the term. So act locally is, how are you going to change? You want to change how the world looks, wash your windows. That's the, you know, the deal. And I was curious, I was reading in scripture this past weekend that how the first and second temples that are the basis of Judeo-Christian experience, that the temple is inside each of us at the same time. So if we have to make sure, the same way as you would sweep the temple and keep it clean from everything that would make it dirty or not nice or honor God, you want to sweep all your stuff away, right? I think it was Victor Hugo who said, you know, just sweep the sidewalk in front of your own house, right? And then you'll make the world a cleaner place. So I think people always say, well, where do I begin? I said, well, there's only one place to begin. You are, you know, that it's, if you're afraid to start with you, if you don't have the courage to start with you, you'll never come with integrity to anything else. I think that's.
And it's about too coming clean with ourselves, no, and with other people around us, meaning being authentic and vulnerable, as to share our own experience too of where we're at and what we're creating next. Because it seems that right now the world is going through a lot of cleanups.
I think it's either you pay now or you pay later. So it's not like the world's deciding, let's go through this, and it's compelled into the situation. We're not going to do the right thing because we're not going to finally be nice to each other on the planet because somebody's going to write a great commercial about it. We're going to be nice to each other on the planet because we're going to find out that if we don't, the planet's going to collapse. We're going to be compelled into that situation. We're going to be, right now, for example, or historically at least, environmental concerns were considered little pussy. They're women. They're like feminine. They're like, yeah, they may be green, but they're also red, white, and blue, right? If you're not thinking about taking care of this, it's as disrespectful as anything else, right? Would you leave your home filthy? Would you act filthy to the person you live with? Why would you not have that respect? And so we're going to be compelled to do it, not only because we choose to do it, but because we're going to compel it. So a lot of times what happens in life is we get dragged kicking and screaming to a better place. No matter, you know how often in our life there's some change, and we're so antagonistic to this change. This is not what I had in mind, of course. Our ego had projected out how things were supposed to be. Again, this is an adventure, right? Me steering, I'm not steering. So you can have it. Somebody says, yeah, this is going to happen. So I didn't plan to have my kids. I didn't plan to fall in love with the women I fell in love with. I didn't plan to be, I couldn't have envisioned living my life as this poet-philosopher, doing these things that I'm doing. This year there's about 100 million impressions of quotes of mine and things out there all over the world. It was way beyond what I was the first person in my family that graduated from high school, let alone university, and I couldn't have seen that. I couldn't have seen it, so I couldn't have said, this is what I'm going to get. All I kept, you know, it's like sometimes you find your way in life like a guy in a cave. You just keep touching the wall. I'm here. You keep moving, you know, down in a certain direction that feels good to you, and try to make sure.
Moving.
Yes, and you're not sure. Well, you don't have any choice. Let me give you an example of that. We live in a little blue ball spinning in space at 1,070 miles an hour. So moving is our state. We may not be aware of it because of the laws of gravity, so we think we're stable. But we're spinning at 1,070 miles an hour as we hold this conversation. Every 5 months, every cell in your body sloughs. So every 5 months, you are literally becoming a new person. Your body is going through transitions. Your skin is the largest organ in your body, and your cells dissolve every 5 months. So you are constantly in a change of transition on a planet spinning like on this. So my take on it is, imagine you're standing on a ball that's spinning under your feet at 1,000 miles an hour. To make progress isn't about trying to get ahead. It's about lifting your foot up and lifting another one, putting it down, and keeping your balance, because the spin of the earth will move you forward. You don't have to worry about, gee, I'm really going to try and get old. You will get older, right? And you don't have to, Einstein said, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, it only changes form. So all of us are in a state of transition. A state of transition is our state. Change is the only constant. So we don't have to worry about how we're going to make progress. The question is, are you going to keep your balance while you're trying to make this progress. There's the challenge. And how do you keep your balance, knowing that any of us can find our balance at any moment, and any of us can lose our balance at any moment. We could be in the darkest shadow at the darkest time, and we can lose our balance, or we can find it, or we can be under the brightest sun with the most splendor and gifts in this world. And we all know people who life has blessed in many, many ways, and they have very promptly lost their balance.
So Noah, to end this conversation, tell us about this little teddy bear before you tell us what is for you living a juicy life, because this is a juicy living tour, so I really want to hear that. So in whichever order you prefer.
Well, I'm going to end with the juicy life and come with the bear first, because I love the idea. I'm going to hold that, because I have a very hedonic, I love food and images and cooking, so the idea of a juicy life is
it brings a lot.
Well, to the idea of your life being an adventure. Different times people have come to me at different things. When the people at Starbucks came to me and said they wanted to put my thought on a Starbucks cup, I wasn't sure I wanted to have it on a coffee cup, because I was considered by many a very serious intellectual. And how talked to a friend of mine's wife, and she says, well, what's the quote that's going to be on the cup? And I said, the quote is, do not kiss your children so they will kiss you back, but so they will kiss their children and their children's children. And she said, how many cups is that going to be on? I said, well, they told me they think it's going to be one of their most successful cups, and it's planned for 30 million cups. It was their most successful. So she said, you know, if that quote is on 30 million cups, and one out of every 100 people who get a cup kiss a kid, then 300,000 kids are going to get kissed. And I thought to myself, good day's work. 2.5 years ago, this guy came to me and said, you know, I really love hearing the way you speak and you say things, and I'd like to do a line of Noah bears, and I'd like you to write 1 minute talks about some different things, about friendship and feeling better. So he's made this bear. He said, we think this bear looks like you. I said, well, I'm flattered. You have to ask the bear. So the bear, this is a prayer bear, and I'm going to and they've sold about 100,000 of these prayer bears already, and they really Feel Better and Friend Bear, and you can see it on my website. But the bears, it just seems to connect with people in a really nice way. So I'm going to play this for you, and it's a 1 minute, and the mouth moves, and on the cover it says, "Prayer is a path where there is none." Right, for all of us in our life. It's the Noah prayer bear. I think you can.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Someone once asked me if I pray because it makes sense, and I said, no, I don't pray because it makes sense. I pray because my life doesn't make sense without prayer. I pray to raise myself up and to keep going when I can't even seem to get going. In the middle of life's struggles, there inevitably comes a time in each of our lives when we collapse on the trail or in an office, or even stuck in traffic. And prayer, I have found, is a path where there is none. Tears falling long enough can scar rocks, but tears falling on our cheeks can also cause us to bloom. And the wind in your face just might be God blowing you kisses. Your life is a gift. Prayer is a thank you note. So put your faith and not your fears in charge, and may you never forget that God is never so with you as when you feel alone. Peace and blessings, Noah.
This is so cute.
So I never thought I'd have a line of teddy bears, but I didn't think I was going to be on a coffee cup or on this. But I also didn't think I was going to be here with you this morning. We were trying to schedule and reschedule a few times, and life has its own, it's just a testimony to our conversation. So to come back, when you asked me what constitutes a juicy life, I sort of want to invert that and say life is juicy. The real question is whether we're going to have the courage to bite into it, right, and savor it, and be in the moment with that, knowing that it's fleeting. It's fleeting. And no small part of life's juiciness is understanding that this moment is rare and precious, and all God wants us to do is enjoy it and be loving and caring and supportive to others. And we will know that our life is blessed. I one time, a long time ago, said to eat a wet strawberry, I've grown a wet mustache. So I'm a big believer in the really biting into life and letting the juices run down your chin, and letting your heart really experience what it means to know the fruit of living. It would be it's a great gift. Life is juicy. The question is whether we'll have the courage to bite into it. And I would remind everybody that it's well worth doing, because even when the fruit is gone, the memory is a secret garden and can be just as rich in that. So there are many days when I sit and think about juicy things that have happened to me in my life, and I thank God. And thanks for being here.
And I thank God for today and for this blessing of being together and sharing all this juiciness of yours.
Oh, thank you.
With everybody around the world. Bye-bye, my beautiful co-creators. Much love. Much